Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of To The Point podcast. Everybody's doing well on this beautiful, beautiful Monday after another nice weekend. The weather is starting to turn around after a rather lackluster July. We're getting some warm weather this week here in New Brunswick, so I'm sure we're all very excited about that. Planning a big week here on the podcast. Gonna have a show today, obviously, as we're live. I'm gonna have me and Seamus will be back tomorrow at our usual time slot talking Breaking Bad. Wednesday, tentatively, I'm going to have Harrison Schutenbeld, who I've had on before. We're going to talk some NBA, go through free agency, stack up some teams heading into next season. So that should be some fun. Show Thursday. And then Friday is the roundtable. We're going to break down the Atlantic Division, what we make of every team during free agency, their moves, players they've lost, and kind of stack up how we see each team right now. I get it. We're in mid-August or getting close to the halfway point of the month. But why not dive into it now? It's preseason week one of the NFL, and we're already talking about players that are struggling. So we're going to get into all that this week. So that should be fun. I also plan on doing the other three divisions in hockey, potentially with guests. A few will be just yours truly. And also I want to talk about divisions in the NFL. I know Adam Beers is going to be lined up the next couple of weeks. Matt Wright will make his return. I'm also trying to get an NFL guest on. When I say I try to get guests, I really do try. I send out direct messages to people. I like doing interviews with people. Unfortunately, not everybody, everybody doesn't answer me. But I'm going to keep trying to get people in the world of sports that I can talk to and get some insight on anything. But if anybody has a guest idea, or if you think you have an in on getting him on the show, I'd love to hear from you, because I'd never turn away a guest. I never turn away an interview. I really enjoy them. And if we can figure out a time slot that works for the guest, I would love to have them on. So that's really what this week looks like. When it comes to today, the weekend kind of came and went, and a lot has happened. So we're going to bounce around today. We got just today, John Cooper being named head coach of Team Canada at the Olympics. Well-deserved. I think he was the only choice, but there's that news item. We have the Rogers Cup starting today. Tennis tournament in Montreal and Toronto, men's and women's draw. We didn't get the Rogers Cup last year. So what's nice is we're starting to see things come back to Canada in the world of sports. No Rogers Cup last year. We have that. We didn't have the Blue Jays playing in Canada. We have that. The CFL returned over the weekend. So we are starting to get back to a more normal slate, not only sports, but just living, being able to go to a sporting event, seeing a sold out crowd in Saskatchewan and Winnipeg over the weekend was a great sight to see. So we'll touch on the Rogers Cup. We get Felix Auger-Aliassime, Denis Shapovalov, Canadians in the men's draw. You got Bianca Leila Fernandez in the women's draw, and also Vasek Pospisil. Rafael Nadal is in Canada, which is a nice sight. He got upset last week in Washington against world number 50 Lloyd Harris, so he's looking to bounce back. Daniil Medvedev's there. So it should be great. The last time the Rogers Cup was held, Bianca Andreescu won the tournament, defeating Serena Williams. So we'll see what she's got. I mean, she's lost in the back-to-back first rounds at majors. She's been on a downward slope, and she needs some confidence. So should be an interesting week. She gets a bye into the second round because of her high seed. But the Rogers Cup's always fun. You got prime time every weeknight. So tonight on the men's draw, I know you have Vasek Pospisil playing Tommy Paul, the American, followed by Nick Kyrgios, the always entertaining Aussie, facing big American Riley Alpeka. That's the men's primetime slot tonight, but those will change throughout the week. And it's just a tournament I enjoy. It's in Canada, and it's good tennis. It's getting you primed for the U.S. Open, which will begin in a few weeks. So there's that. The big really story of the weekend for Canada, there's so many Canadian stories. I mentioned the CFL, but the Toronto Blue Jays. The Blue Jays are on a tear. They've won 10 of their last 11. George Springer is really starting to come alive. He's got 12 home runs in his last 7 games. He's back in that leadoff spot. He hits, a 3-run shot in the bottom of the 8th last night for Toronto to come back from 7-2 down to beat the Red Sox, take 3 of 4, now sit 3 back in the wild card race of Oakland. And, as good as the Blue Jays have been since the All-Star break, the Red Sox have just been terrible. Their pitching is starting to leave from their game. Hits are few and far between. Yesterday, they had a huge lead, but again, their bullpen couldn't salvage it. Matt Barnes got Marcus Semien hit a walk-off homer on him. Then he gives up that 3-run in the 8th, so he gets a blown hold opportunity. So their bullpen's a mess. Pitching isn't there, and they got a much tougher schedule down the stretch than the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays this week have a series against the Los Angeles Angels, who are not a playoff team, although it will be interesting this week to see the 2 MVP candidates in the AL go head-to-head. You'll have Shohei Ohtani, who is doing incredible things, leads the majors in home runs with 37, also has a sub-3 ERA. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility right now that he could win the MVP and the Cy Young in the American League. And, some might say, well, it's just because he's, that he's hitting and he's pitching. Well, he's got a 2.89 ERA. Yeah, Lance Lynn has better stats than him. I think Lance Lynn right now is the front runner to win American League Cy Young. However, this guy is incredible. He is the unicorn of unicorns. I talk about in hockey with Tom Wilson and these type of players that you don't see every other day. This guy, when he hits a home run, it sounds like he's using an aluminum bat. It's wood, and he's cracking the thing. It's going 450 feet, and it's, effortless. And just pitching the multitude of pitches. He's going 6 innings all the time. He's gotten 9 out of 16 starts have been quality starts. That's 6 innings or more. This guy's been really good all season. And I just think it's a great story. But you're going to see Vladdy, he's up to 35 home runs. He leads the majors in runs batted in. He's also batting .320, so he's having a great season as well. But I love the matchup. I think it's really compelling to see these two guys go head-to-head. And, the Blue Jays need to keep riding this momentum. You take 3 or 4, you can't have a letdown against the Angels. Angels pitching other than Ohtani is bare. They do have Mike Trout's still out. I don't know if he'll return this year the way it's looking. They don't have Anthony Rendon, just had season-ending surgery. So it's Ohtani and a bunch of guys. And for the Blue Jays, even though Bo Bichette was put on the injured list yesterday, Valera has stepped in, and he was one of the runs that scored last night. He started off the 8th inning, 1 out in the 8th. He gets a single. That got the inning going. You're seeing Santiago Espinal, who's playing really good at third. The pitching for the Blue Jays has reestablished itself. Jose Barrios has been a great add so far. Robbie Ray has been consistent all year. And, yesterday, Hyunjin Ryu was not good. Couldn't find the strike zone. They were getting hits off him left and right. But credit the bullpen. Came in there and they got the job done. Dolis with a clutch inning. You see Romano come in. Guys are doing what they're supposed to do. And it's this time of year, I still think it's a bit early. I'm hearing a lot of Blue Jays super fans say, well, this is the 2015 team. Well, the one thing about the 2015 team was that was a veteran-laden team. And this team for the Blue Jays really has one guy that has been through this. That's George Springer. George Springer's won a World Series, whether it's with the Astros in 2017. That is the most tainted World Series title in the history of the sport due to the sign stealing and the garbage cans and all that hoopla. But he did it. He batted leadoff. He won World Series MVP. So he's gone through the grind. He's been to another World Series in between that. So he has a long runway of success, and he knows what it takes to get there. But Vladdy has 2 games of playoff experience. Bichette has 2 games of playoff experience. Same with Biggio. These young guys do not have a lot of experience. Hyunjin Ryu has done it. He's gone with the Dodgers to multiple World Series, but I do think he's only pitching 1 of every 5 days. These position players haven't been in many stretch runs. The Blue Jays made the playoffs last year because of the expanded playoffs, because of the pandemic. There's no expanded playoffs this year. There's not another team getting in. So they're not going to catch Tampa Bay. That the division's over. Tampa Bay is going to win this division easily. Can you get in the wild card spot? And I think they definitely can. You look at the Red Sox. They're sputtering. They're in a world of hurt right now. They have an off day today. I'm sure that they're thankful for it because they've been under siege for a while right now. Then you have the Oakland Athletics. Oakland is a sneaky team because they're always in the playoff race. And they got good bats in Matt Chapman and Matt Olson. And they just lost center fielder Ramon Laureano, who tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs. He's suspended the rest of the season. But they did acquire Starling Marte at the trade deadline, so that acquisition even looms larger now. But, they're a team under Bob Melvin that, they're not sexy. They don't have a Vladdy, they don't have a Bichette, but they just find ways to win. So they're not going to go away. And you look at this weekend, the Blue Jays take 3 of 4, and it's huge because you beat a division team. However, you're chasing Oakland for that second wild card spot. You don't gain the ground because they played Texas and they won all their games. So the Blue Jays need help, and they also need to keep playing winning baseball. They got the Angels, they got the Mariners this weekend. So easier schedule, and they really do not have a tough schedule down the stretch. They play the AL Central. I know they play the Tigers. I believe they play the White Sox down the stretch, which won't be an easy series. They are, I believe, the best team in the American League. They just got left fielder Eloy Jimenez back. He gets 6 RBIs last night against the Cubs. He looks like he's, just picking up where he left off. But, can they surpass the Yankees, who are still playing good baseball? They lost Anthony Rizzo to COVID. So he was really playing really well at first base for them, but he's going to be gone for a while. They do have some injuries. Their pitching is limited. The Blue Jays pitching is better than the New York Yankees, top to bottom. So it'll be an interesting race. The American League wildcard is now starting to get interesting. In the National League, it is and it isn't. You have the Dodgers, who are still trying to catch the Giants, but the Giants refuse to go away. They take 2 or 3 against Milwaukee, a really good team. But the Giants are one of the best stories in professional sports this year, in my opinion. Just what they've done so far. Just Brandon Belt and Brandon Crawford and Buster Posey, just guys who have winning intangibles and that have won in their careers. But everybody says, well, they're on their back 9, including me. Johnny Cueto, who's had multiple problems with his elbows, he's done. Kevin Gausman, who gets tossed out of Baltimore, he's done. He's going to the Giants to rot. However, they just play consistent ball all year. They played the Dodgers really well. They played the Padres really well. And they just find ways to win close games. They have a plus 11 win percentage in extra innings this year. That's just called clutch, getting big hits. Adding a Chris Bryant at third base can only help that team because the guy, again, he's won a World Series. I talk about deadline acquisitions. There's key players that will help you win a cup that haven't won one before. I think of the Chicago teams getting guys like Michael Handzus was big for them in 2013. Getting Dave Bolin types and guys that really help them propel to a Stanley Cup. But trading for a guy that has won is invaluable to me because they know what it takes. And Chris Bryant's not a bit piece. Chris Bryant won the World Series MVP. He has been through it all. He was a star for the Chicago Cubs. Cubs fans cried seeing him leave. But he's a guy that can bat 3-4 in your lineup and be a huge contributor, not just a guy who comes off the bench and is going to pinch hit. That's the difference between adding a Chris Bryant for the Giants and the Red Sox making a crazy acquisition of Kyle Schwarber, where they have every outfield position tagged. They have the DH and JD Martinez, so they can't play him anywhere. He didn't play against the Blue Jays this weekend Kyle Schwarber, who was having a great year for the Washington Nationals. I agree he should have been traded at the deadline. The Nationals were trading everybody, but the Red Sox were not the team to acquire him, and now it's hurting him because he doesn't get to play. So I look, and Schwarber's a World Series winner. So again, I can't kill the move, but when you don't play the guy, why the hell did you trade for him? And it's not just for depth. Kyle Schwarber's a really good player. But I look at an addition like Chris Bryant, at Max Scherzer for the Dodgers. I mean, Max Scherzer's a 3-time Cy Young winner, but he's won a World Series. He's gone through the grind recently, and he knows what it takes to get there. And I just look at that as invaluable. And out in the National League, Padres did make some acquisitions, but Cincinnati's trailing them by 2.5 games. Can that get interesting? We'll see. Cincinnati is a team that's always kind of just lurked. You think they're going to get somewhere, and then they hit the brakes. Joey Votto has been a really good story this year, having home runs in 7 straight games, having some decent pitching. But I don't really trust Cincinnati to surpass the Padres. I think they're too good. You look at Cronenworth, and if Tatis can come back healthy, Darvish and Ryan Weathers in the pitching staff, I just like San Diego's team more. So one of the more interesting races. We'll see if the Red Sox can turn it around, because it's been a disaster for them lately. And Blue Jays have an off day today. Red Sox have an off day. I think there's only 6 games in the majors tonight, so a quiet night. Probably a good night to catch some tennis. Actually, only 5 games in the majors tonight. Reds, Indians, you got Brewers, Cubs, Yankees, Royals, White Sox, Twins, and Miami is down in San Diego. So again, the Blue Jays are taking Canada by storm. They're at home again. I think that's really provided a bump to this country with COVID really being rampant, especially in the southern states of the U.S. It's good to see that we're starting to get back to normal, and that things are at least creeping back toward a normal state, and that we can hope to see some positive steps down the line here. So these are the stories of the weekend. Before we get to last week's stuff, like the Canadian women at the Olympics, John Cooper being named head coach of Team Canada for the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics, which will start in February. Now, the NHL players and the IOC, or basically the owners, and the NHL have not reached an agreement yet. Mike Sullivan was named head coach at Team USA last week. Another great choice. Been a great hire down in Pittsburgh, leading them to 2 cups and really being the face of USA hockey right now. But I think the players will go. NHL players at the Olympics, I haven't, definitely gonna have an unpopular opinion here, but I'm not that big on it. I understand players wanting to go represent their country. Of course, I have a Canadian tattoo on my arm. I love this country and everything it stands for. However, if I'm an owner, why would I ever want to send my players to the Olympics? Number one, it makes me no money. That's business. It's money. Why do you pay players millions of dollars so you can make billions? Simple math. So you don't make any money. You risk your player getting injured. So if you have Braden Point, who has been so important to Tampa Bay winning back-to-back Stanley Cup championships, why would I care if Braden Point goes and wins a gold medal for Canada? I wouldn't. And I'm a Canadian. But you know what I want? I want to win 3 in a row. Because he's going to be making $9.5 million here. And it's going to be a lot harder for us to win. But when he's making 7, maybe we can win 3 in a row. If you win 3 cups in a row, you could just, the rest of your career, you're set. Joe Quenneville has a pretty good life. He got rehired, didn't have to. Still one of the top 3 coaches of all time. Book it. Stan Bowman, still in Chicago, but 3 cups. Taves, Kane. Oh, those guys make too much money. They won 3 cups. They kind of earned it. I see a lot of guys around the league that we'll touch on today that are making a hell of a lot of money, and some of them haven't won a playoff round. I'm not even chirping the least this time. I'm talking about Nurse, and we'll get into it. But I don't mind the amateur. I would prefer, the World Junior model has been so successful. And why not send junior kids to play for Canada at the Olympics? They don't get paid to play junior. So if they go represent their country at the Olympics, what's it hurt? What if there's no age gap? You can send college kids, NCAAs. You can pick guys playing overseas. It's just, I don't need to see NHL players at the Olympics. And again, that's an unpopular opinion, but it's my opinion. And this is my show, so I can have it. And I won't complain if the NHL players go, but I would rather have Braden Point playing for Tampa, just as, I'm a fan too. I'm a fan of the game. I don't have a favorite team, but I love the sport. I would rather have Braden Point playing for Tampa in May than seeing him play for Canada in February and me potentially not getting to see him in May. The Stanley Cup playoffs mean more to me than the Olympics. For the women going, and this is the same with soccer, for the Canadian women, when it comes to hockey, they're going to play at the Worlds in starting August 20th, which is fantastic after the debacle Nova Scotia did. That means something. They don't get to play year-round. They don't make a lot of money. They make hardly any, and they train after doing a 9-to-5. So that going to the Olympics for those women is not even comparable. When the Canadian men lose, when they lost in 2006, did that hurt? Of course. You're a competitor. But you know what? 2 days later, you're lacing it up in the NHL. So it's not the same pain. For the women, you train literally years other than the Worlds to get to the Olympics. It's like any other Olympic athlete. I talked to my mother today about swimmers and gymnasts. We care about them for 2 weeks, and now for 3 years, we will not give a shit. And for every mother that said, "Well, I care Penny," you don't, because you'll forget Penny Alexiak's name in 2 days. And that might sound harsh, but it's just the truth. And for these women, losing is so painful. It's going to be Canada or US basically every time, but it doesn't change the fact that they don't have a league. There's the multiple women's leagues, but again, they're not making that same type of money. They're not getting the opportunity that men do. And it just means more. And, I see European athletes like a Henrik Lundqvist, where I think winning that gold medal was the antithesis of his career. It was the top shelf. Would he love to have a Stanley Cup championship? I'm sure he would. But I think that gold medal holds more weight for him being a European athlete. Because you grow up, the Stanley Cup is a long ways away. You're in Sweden. Representing your country is just something you do overseas. You play on the national team. There's national teams throughout your life. That's how you get into the game. It's just a different style. It's a different, grid, so to speak, where, you go, and here you play junior A, then you might play midget AAA, then you go this route. And over there, it's you represent your country, you do it that way. It's just different. And so, again, I'm not here to downplay the Olympics, but that's just my opinion. I think John Cooper was the correct hire. He's won back-to-back Stanley Cups. He's been to 3 Stanley Cups in the last, 5 years, 6 years, losing obviously to Chicago, but then winning the last two, had pushing Tampa to the best record in the history of the regular season. Did lose to Columbus that year in the playoffs, but winning 62 games in regular season, pretty incredible. And Barry Trotz, you got Bruce Cassidy and Peter DeBoer. What a cast of characters and what a coaching staff. You got DeBoer, who's been to multiple Cup finals. You have Barry Trotz, who's won a Stanley Cup and leading the Islanders to back-to-back conference finals. Then you have Bruce Cassidy, who has not won a cup yet, but he got to the Bruins to the Stanley Cup final in 2019. And I think he's one of the best coaches in the NHL right now. So definitely a shift from Canada, where Mike Babcock has ran the show for the last number of Olympics, but he's not in the game right now. He's elsewhere, and Stevie Yzerman is not the GM of this team. It is Doug Armstrong. So it's a shift in Hockey Canada and the way they've done business. But I think this was the natural transition. You have the guy who's winning right now, and it doesn't make any sense for Barry Trotz to be the head coach while Cooper is the assistant. Cooper has bested Barry twice, back-to-back years. And you could say Tampa's, he had a better roster. I don't care. You're on the bench of the winning team. You deserve some credit for that. And but Canada's got some great leadership. I like the bench. I think they really didn't miss anybody. I like what they've done with the whole staff. And obviously, I think the NHL players will be going to the Olympics, but in the event that they don't, none of these coaches will be going either. So it's obviously a wait and see approach right now to the Winter Olympics, and if NHL players will be present. But we'll continue to monitor that as time goes on here and to the point. But definitely interesting discussions and different scenarios down the road here. Friday was really an incredible day for this country, because you had, the 4x100 meter relay where Andre DeGrasse won another medal, 6 medals in 6 events in the Olympics. Incredible. Obviously, the bigger story was him winning the 200 meter, but he ran a great last push. Canada was not even going to medal until he really turned the jets on, and he wins, gets us a bronze medal, and bronze is 3rd place. So kudos. But a great Olympics for Andre DeGrasse. I don't know if it'll be his last Olympics, but Donovan Bailey talked about the amount of opportunities DeGrasse is going to have now that he wins a 200 meter. Really, one of the faces of sprinting, of just track and field. And Bailey talked about all the different opportunities he had after becoming, winning the 100 meter, being the fastest man in the world. And that's really exciting for DeGrasse, where he can pivot from track and field if he wants to, go into different events and set himself up well financially for his life and his kids for the rest of his life. But great tournament for him. And who knows, he might just win a Lou Marsh, which if you guys don't know, that is voted on every year by Canadian writers, and it's given out to the Canadian athlete of the year. Last year, Lavant Duvernay-Tardif, who was the offensive lineman for the Kansas City Chiefs, who sat out the entire season because he is a doctor, went to McGill, and he sat out the entire year so he could help out at the Montreal hospital. So he won the award. He co-won the award with Alphonso Davies, the great midfielder for Bayern Munich, a soccer player playing in Germany. So, we've seen Connor McDavid. Rarely hockey players win it because it's, there's so many other things. But we've seen Connor McDavid has won it in the past. Christine Sinclair has won it in the past. Bianca Andreescu won it a few years ago when she won, won in Indian Wells, then won in the Rogers Cup, then won the US Open in a great year. So some great athletes have won it. I think you look at it, you got DeGrasse, potentially Penny Oleksiak are 2 names that come to mind. Warner, the decathlete, potentially. And unfortunately, you can't give the Lou Marsh to an entire team, because if you could, it would be going to the Canadian women's soccer team, who capped off an incredible tournament, winning gold on Friday morning. And I was so nervously watching. I couldn't watch all of it because I was at work. But when it got to extra time, the last 5 minutes, I live streamed the game on my phone while I worked. And I hate shootouts, as you all know. I'm not a big fan of penalty kicks. I wish the game would have kept going. I feel bad for Sweden in a sense, because I don't think that's the way the game should end. And quite honestly, if it did continue, I don't think the Canadian women would have won gold. Sweden had a lot of momentum. And, really, the first half, especially, they dominated Canada. Possession, opportunities, but Canada just fought back like we do in this country. And what a moment. 3-2 in penalty kicks, couple of huge saves, and a 20-year-old woman, younger than my sister, makes a game-winning penalty kick shot to give Canada a gold medal. First time ever winning gold in women's soccer at the Olympics, and putting Canada on top of the mountain. And I said this last week, and I'll repeat it. I think this has the potential to be the most important / defining medal that Canada's ever won at any Olympics. And there's many reasons for that. And I really hope with this medal, not only does it continue our women's soccer program that has been fantastic in this country, we continue to provide a great product. As we've just seen, we defeated everybody. US, get out of here. Sweden, get out of here. Brazil, smell you later. We beat everybody that came to play us. And I look at and I say, could this propel Canada to get a professional women's soccer league? I really hope so. Because if it isn't going to happen now, when the hell is it going to happen? We just put the world on notice of how good we are. But we're also, throughout this whole tournament, showcasing how good we are, meaning we can provide a product. And maybe Canada can be the mecca for women's soccer, meaning, can you have your Paris Saint-Germains, you have Manchester United across the pond for men, but why can't Canada? And I get climate, but there's BC, there's indoor stadiums. Why can't we be the place for women's soccer? From May till December, they play MLS in Canada, in Toronto, in Montreal, in crappy conditions, but they play. They have the infrastructure available. You have BMO Field in Toronto. You have the Colisée in Montreal. Why can't we have a league? Can they play soccer at McMahon Stadium in Calgary where the Stampeders play? I can't see why not. Can they do this in Edmonton? And maybe we start a bigger league and we allow American teams to join, and maybe across the pond. But I would love to see Canada jump on this and be the face of women's soccer, be the home for it. Could we be, I'm not saying the size of it, but, in hockey, is Canada really the face? Yes, but we still only have 7 teams, whatever it is, in Canada of 32. It's a low bar. In basketball, 1 team. In baseball, 1 team. So can we put a dent in this? Can we put ourselves in a position where we can have control? We can set the boundaries. We can say, okay, you're coming, you're not. And set up a league for these women with sponsorships, with backing of people with money to really make this viable and make this something very successful. And I can't see why not. Throughout this pandemic, we're seeing more and more damn billionaires. They're all going to space. Why can't we fund a fucking soccer league? Young kids are going to play soccer. Parents, you don't want your kids to play football. Okay, it's too violent, whatever. You don't want to play hockey. Soccer should be there. Why do you have to go across, go play overseas? You don't. We're kicking ass. Our men's program has a lot of work to do. But fuck the men's program. The women are doing it right now. Build a structure. Get some backing. Government, throw some money. And let's get something going here. That's why I think it has the potential, which is a scary word, to be the biggest medal we've ever won. But whether that happens or not, and it should, and I really hope that it can bring that change, is it caps off a great career for Christine Sinclair. And she's 38. She had to get subbed out at the 85th minute because it was incredibly hot. The conditions were so tough. They had to move the game, and it was still dreadfully hot. But she wasn't the star of this tournament for Canada. She's been the star so many times in the past, but it wasn't her tournament to be the star. Yet she did it. She gets the gold medal after being the best player, the best women's soccer player of all time. And you could argue she's one of the best Canadian athletes of all time, looking at her resume. But I love that, where it's a storybook ending where you win 2 bronze medals in kind of devastating fashion, losing to the US, and then you're likely your final Olympics. You get to that big moment where you're playing the US again in the semifinal and you prevail. And for her, like I said, I think she's going to have so many opportunities like Andre DeGrasse. This woman should be a coach. She should be a motivational speaker. Whatever she wants to do, it should be available to her because she's done so much for this country. She's put us on the map when it comes to soccer. Our men's program, we know Alphonso Davies. He's playing in Bayern Munich. She's playing for Canada. That's what we know, Christine Sinclair. That's what we know about her, is that she represents her country. And when she does everything she possibly can to help us win. And kudos to her. Kudos to this women's soccer team who battled throughout the whole tournament, were the underdogs into semifinal and the final when it comes to betting, and they get through it. In penalty kicks, I wish that rule would change, but I'm not mad with the result. And what an incredible moment for Canada to get the gold. I enjoyed the Olympics. I thought the second week was far more entertaining with the track. Swimming was good, but I think there's too many events. They're taking out baseball and softball from the Olympics and putting in breakdancing. Breakdancing is not a sport. Sorry for all your breakdancers out there. It's not a sport. Rock climbing is not a sport. Sorry, it's not. It's a pastime. No offense if you rock climb. The speed walking, I don't even think it's a sport. I love walking. I don't think that's a sport. And that's my sport, so to speak. So I don't think baseball and softball should be there. Baseball, Summer Olympics. Baseball used to be America's favorite pastime. The NFL surpassed it. But how is baseball not a Summer Olympic sport? And breakdancing is going to come into play here? Craziness. But that's the Olympics for you. They let in. See it in the winter too. There's a lot of crap. Like, okay, let's not have this certain event. Well, let's have 85 figure skating events for the first week. And you'll be allowed to hear my venting about figure skating in about 6 months' time when the Olympics come back in February for the Winter Olympics in Beijing. But good Olympics. Opening, closing ceremonies. Didn't watch a second of either. I could care less about that. But to the athletes, there was COVID going on, a lot of restrictions. Credit to all of you for getting through it, and for our Canadian athletes who brought home some medals. All the preparation, the 5 years to get where you're at. You deserve a ton of credit just for being ready and willing and able to just be in this position. And for our Canadian women's soccer, Andre DeGrasse, Damian Warner, the decathlete, Evan Dunphy in speed walking, everybody who won a medal, they can't take that away from you. Good for you for being in that position and taking advantage of that opportunity, because it's incredible, and hopefully it continues. Hopefully we see more of that in 3 years now, where we'll have the 2024 Olympics in Paris. This weekend, it marked the return of the Canadian Football League. And I talked last week about my love for the CFL, mainly because of my relationship with my grandfather. He was a huge CFL fan, Hamilton Tiger Cats fan, and he got me into the CFL. And for the game to be gone for almost 20 months, I thought the product was really good. The opening game of the season, very, very entertaining. You had Hamilton scoring on their first drive for Jeremiah Masoli. Looked like he hadn't lost a beat coming off an ACL surgery. But then you see them rally Winnipeg. You got Colaros, who had a solid start, and they were without Andrew Harris, without Darvin Adams, but he gets Kenny Lawler to catch 2 touchdowns. So Lawler was a big factor in the game. You have backup running back who really came out to play for Winnipeg. Brady Oliveira had 22 rushes for 126 yards. And, Winnipeg forced a couple turnovers. Willie Jefferson getting an interception. They get an interception late. And they ultimately win the game 19-6, where something I think we saw over the weekend is just defenses in the CFL. They are better positioned right now than offenses. And Milt Stegall actually said this in Overdrive last week, that he thought defenses would be better early than offenses. And I think that came to fruition in week 1. Winnipeg's defense was really all over Hamilton. We saw in the game between Ottawa and Edmonton, where Ottawa wins the game, but Matt Nichols only has 72 passing yards for the whole game. And it was a disaster offensively. They couldn't get a run game going. Paul Lapalisse in his first game as head coach, it looked like a disaster. But they win the game because they intercept Trevor Harris 3 times. Abdul Kanay has 2 interceptions, including one that he took all the way back to the house. They get 4 sacks. You get 6 sacks on the other side. So it was a defensive battle where Harris was getting yards, but they couldn't put up points. Big sacks late in drives. Lewis Ward was huge in this game, putting up 2 field goals of 50-plus yards. He was 3 for 3 in the game. And so that was interesting. Trevor Harris, Darrell Walker was getting it going, but James Wilder Jr., the former Argonaut and Alouette running back, did look really good in his Edmonton debut. He had over 130 total yards for the game, rushing and receiving, but that wasn't enough to overcome, as Harris dumped the ball off to fullback Tuck in space, but he was tackled as time expired at the 2-yard line. And it was incredible sight to see, as it just the last play of the game, Ottawa, goal line stand basically, and they improved to 1-0, winning on the road. Really, one of the craziest game was Friday night between Saskatchewan and BC, where Saskatchewan starts their first 3 drives, all resulting in touchdowns, where you had Fajardo, who looked fantastic. They had their run game going, which couldn't be stopped. And it was just a clinic from Saskatchewan, where nobody could figure them out. They were getting plays out quickly. You had Fajardo going to Kyron Moore and Shaq Evans, and he looked like in mid-season form. And the real big surprise was that Mike Riley, one of the best quarterbacks in the CFL, didn't get the start. He had a shoulder injury. They thought he would play before the game, hadn't announced anything. And, rookie Nathan Rourke comes out to play, and they're down 32-9 at halftime. And the second half, Saskatchewan puts up 0 points. Mike Riley starts the third quarter. Rourke throws a touchdown in the second half, and they ultimately almost come back and win the game. But it was a weird start for BC where Mike Riley was able to play the second half, but he didn't start. So that made no sense to me. Rourke had never played a game in the CFL. And, Rick Campbell, for his first game as a head coach, came off a little rough to me. And Saskatchewan, obviously, losing in the Western Final last year, improves to 1-0. But you got Saskatchewan gets the win. You had Winnipeg get a victory. You had Ottawa win in Edmonton. And then you had the Toronto Argonauts, led by McLeod Bethel Thompson, who they struggled in the second half to put up points, but he did what he had to do. They win the game 23-20, 23 seconds left in the game. Bo Levi Mitchell was intercepted. That iced the clock, and the Argonauts get the win on the road. But impressive for them. They have a new receiving core. Bethel Thompson looked very comfortable, didn't go out of his comfort zone, but he's a guy who loves to throw the football. He can scramble and get yards when he has to. That's not his primary focus of his game, but he has some athletic ability. And for Calgary, they missed a lot of the receiving. They're all in Toronto now. Eric Rogers and Jonathan Breskison, they're missing those guys, and it showed because he was really didn't have great timing other than with Josh Huff, who was with the Stampeders prior to the pandemic. And we'll see what Calgary can come back with, but great opening weekend, good football, all, pretty close games. And we look forward to this week. You got Thursday, you'll kick off the CFL week. We got Lions at Stampeders. So both teams are at 0-1. So that'll be a desperate game for both teams to get on the board, especially Calgary having back-to-back home games. Then Friday night, we have Argonauts heading to Winnipeg. So they have back-to-back road games where Bethel Thompson will lead the Argonauts into Winnipeg to face the defending Grey Cup champions, who have, they're both 1-0. And then a doubleheader on Saturday where you have the Alouettes, who will make their season debut following a bye week in week 1. They will be at Edmonton to play the Elks. And then you have Hamilton, who looked to bounce back after a week 1 loss to Saskatchewan. So that's week 2 in the CFL, which will kick off Thursday night at 10:30. So that should be a lot of fun and interesting to see down the stretch, but great return for the CFL. Good to see them out there. Glenn Suter, hearing him call a game is great. And I'm happy to see that the league is back and hopefully get through a whole season without too many COVID issues, which, is popping up all over the world of sports, especially football, in our border and also across the border. Friday, Josh Allen, the quarterback for the Buffalo Bills, signed a long-term extension with the Buffalo Bills. He signed a 6-year, $258 million extension with $150 million guaranteed. This contract made him, it was the most guaranteed money ever given out in the history of the NFL, surpassing Patrick Mahomes, who had 141. And really, it showed that the Buffalo Bills are committing to Josh Allen. What this really told me is when you have a franchise quarterback, you stick with him. And clearly the Buffalo Bills, who really haven't had a stable quarterback since Jim Kelly, where they'd gone to 4 straight Super Bowls in the 90s, they had Tyrod Taylor, and they've had guys where, Kyle Orton, and it's just been lackluster quarterback play. Josh Allen, to his credit, it's a good story. He went to Wyoming. He didn't have any college offers. He had to send tape to teams when he was in junior college to get somebody to take him. No big D1 team, no big conference wanted Josh Allen. So he goes to Wyoming and played pretty well. Mel Kiper Jr., one of the great draft predictors, analysts, had him going number 1. He ultimately fell to Buffalo at the 7th pick. You had Baker Mayfield go 1. You had Sam Darnold go 3. So that draft is always going to be linked. And you had Josh Rosen go 10 and Lamar Jackson go 32nd, the last pick of the first round. So with this signing, Josh Allen becomes the first quarterback of that draft class to get a long-term extension. You have Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson, who are playing their 4th season. The teams can pick up their 5th-year option. So it's not a huge hurry to get these guys signed. However, we've seen Mahomes get the contract. We've seen Deshaun Watson get the contract. Now, younger Josh Allen gets the contract. For for Baker, for Lamar, I think this only excites them because Lamar can say, Josh Allen had a great season last year. He was pretty good the year before. But, he's never won an MVP. Lamar Jackson is an MVP of the NFL. Baker Mayfield had his greatest season last year in Cleveland. So if he can have another year, he should get a lot of money. And honestly, it's not about who's the best quarterback, because Tom Brady, even though I don't think he's the best quarterback right now, but even in his heyday, in 2007 to 2015, say, he never made the most money in the NFL. And that was part of it was by design in New England, where Patriot way was take less money so he can have better talent, will win Super Bowls, which obviously prevailed. But Peyton Manning was never the highest paid quarterback, highest paid player in the league. So we're seeing a shift now where you don't have to be the best quarterback in the game to get a lot of money. Dak Prescott is coming off an injury to his ankle where he only played 5 games last year, but yet he got a massive deal from the Cowboys, and they're banking on him, going deep into their future. He has a 1-2 record in the playoffs. He's one playoff win in his career is in a wild card game. So he does not have a history of winning in the playoffs. Josh Allen had his first playoff experience. He's got 2 playoff games. He's 1-1. Blew a big lead to Houston a number of years back. 1-2 record in the playoffs because he beat they beat the Chargers. So they beat the Colts last year. So they won that game, and then they beat Baltimore, but they lose to Kansas City. So he's not proven in the playoffs either. I mean, he's a great player, was second MVP voting last year behind Aaron Rodgers. But again, and I don't disagree with the move, because I think Josh Allen is a stud. You look at what Buffalo's done, Brandon Beane and that group with Sean McDermott, they have a stable group. Josh Allen is their quarterback. There's not a quarterback in the league other than Mahomes, potentially Aaron Rodgers, I would take before I take Josh Allen, because he's got the athletic ability. He's big. He doesn't get injured yet in his career. He can throw a deep ball. And he's got Cole Beasley, good connection with him, Stephon Diggs. And he had a great year last year when they were bottom 5 in rushing in the NFL. They didn't have a stable running back. They do not have a great tight end. So I look at them and say, they were insufficient at certain areas of the offense. They had a good O-line, but it wasn't that great because run blocking, they were really ineffective. They didn't have a great running attack. So if they had an elite running back, Aaron Jones is an elite running back for Green Bay. I look at Kansas City, they have a different offense. Patrick Mahomes, they don't build to run the football. Mahomes will take off and run certain plays. But, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is not supposed to get 25 to 26 carries a game. I don't think a Buffalo Bills running back would either, but I do think he would be more of a focus, because Josh Allen will take off. He'll get 5-6 carries a game, whether it's by design or when plays break down, because he's really athletic and so big. He's so tough to bring down to the ground. But I'm interested to see how the league reacts to this. Do general managers say, okay, we need to stop giving the next quarterback up so much money, more than I think for players, they say, well, Josh Allen got this, I need a penny more. I'm not taking anything less than him. I'm taking at least a little bit more. And for Baker Mayfield, for Lamar Jackson, do you move on from me? Because if you move on from Baker, if you move on from Lamar, you're unwilling to pay them. Well, then you're kind of back to square one. You're looking for another rookie quarterback who can play under a rookie contract, and you hope to win in that window. Kansas City won when Mahomes was making, no money. He was under his rookie deal. So it does work. Russell Wilson went to his Super Bowls when he was under a rookie contract, making little money, especially even less than Mahomes, because he was a 3rd-round pick. So that is the model of the NFL. You want to win when you have a rookie contract, rookie quarterback under contract. But eventually they get out of that window and you say, well, you're going to have to pay the piper. And I think for some quarterbacks, I'd be willing to move on. Carson Wentz was given a ton of money by the Eagles. I think that was a reach. And we see that they've already moved on from him. He's in Indianapolis. giving Jared Goff, the record money at the time was idiotic to me. Yes, they had gone to a Super Bowl, but you look at that team, Todd Gurley was the focus. They had a really good they had a really good blocking team, and their defense was led by Aaron Donald, still the best defensive player in the NFL. Jared Goff was merely a part of that team. He was not the focal point, and normally the quarterback is the focal point of every team. Jared Goff was just a bit piece. He was just there. And I think that's where you got to kind of look in the mirror and say, what are we doing here? And for Josh Allen, he's not. He's the face of the Bills. For Lamar, I do think he's the face of the Ravens. He obviously plays quarterback very differently than a Josh Allen, than Mahomes. His ability to throw the football down the field has always been put into question. We've seen games where he can do it very effectively. I think of 2 years ago, opening game of the season, they're playing the Miami Dolphins. He threw for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. Hollywood Brown had 2 catches for over 75 yards for scores, and it was his best game throwing the football. But it's gone south and south, and some of that is his receiving core, where his best threat year over year has been Mark Andrews, the tight end. But after that, Hollywood Brown's too inconsistent. They've had Brandon Boykin, who isn't exactly a great player. They've had Michael Crabtree at the end of his career. So we'll see this year where they drafted Rashad Bateman from Minnesota. They drafted Tylan Wallace. They signed Sammy Watkins from Kansas City. They still have the aforementioned Mark Andrews. So can he up his game even more? And also for Lamar and for Baltimore, looking on, he's won one playoff game, a wild card game last year against Tennessee, but he's in all the big games against Kansas City, against Buffalo last year. He came up small, and it's not all on him. But when you play a quarterback, you're going to get a lot of the blame when you lose and all the credit when you win. The backup O-lineman rarely takes heat. Mike Remmers for Kansas City in the Super Bowl rarely, takes blame. He did this past year because Mahomes was running for his life. But again, that's few and far between. It's always, well, quarterback this, QB1, who's the guy? And you think, in LA for the longest time, Sean McVay was revered as the genius. And, he's such a great offensive mind, and he very well may be. But then Jared Goff was given all the blame, and it was never McVay's fault. Well, you can't have your cake and eat it too, McVay. You thought you could, if a great offensive mind, you think you could improve your quarterback's play. They decide to move on to a Matthew Stafford. So I'm just interested to see where this quarterback market goes when it comes to making money and contracts. And I don't think Baker Mayfield or Lamar Jackson will have a long-term extension by the start of this season. But I didn't see Josh Allen have one either. It said talks were going to break if they couldn't agree on a deal. They got it quickly. He gets the most money guaranteed in the history of the NFL. And obviously Buffalo's hoping to build on their great season last year and propel them into Super Bowl. They were a game away last year. Can they get into that conversation with Kansas City? I look at the AFC. Obviously, Kansas City's there. You have Buffalo right behind them. In Buffalo's division, the Jets, no. Miami, Tua, I really don't know what Tua is. Can he be a great quarterback? Probably, but we haven't seen it. Fitzpatrick was more consistent than Tua last year. They also got Patriots. Well, Cam Newton, Mac Jones, who knows where that goes. AFC South, Tennessee, Colts, I don't see them as a big threat. So it's wide open. If you can get, there's obviously Baltimore there too in Cleveland, but I look at it and say the NFC is much tougher. So Buffalo's in a good position to contend and potentially get to a Super Bowl for the first time since the 90s, since Jim Kelly. So we'll see if they can do that. News today, Deshaun Watson, who's still with the Houston Texans, still, he's in a lot of trouble. He's gonna be deposed in February because of issues with multiple masseuses who would come out saying that Watson did sexual misconduct acts on them, and it hasn't been said if he's going to be put on the commissioner's exempt list, which means that he'd be suspended but with pay, which I think will likely happen before the season. He returned to practice today after almost a week away. Houston's in a tough spot. That they're willing to trade him now, but it's been reported that teams are offering pennies on the dollar because we don't know his situation. He's only getting deposed in February. That means the season would be over, and he still have 3 years left in his deal. And I think Kings would gladly take him, but they want to know his status when it comes to availability and also the court and everything that comes along with that. So we'll see where that goes. But Deshaun Watson returned to practice today for the Houston Texans. Darnell Nurse got a huge contract over the weekend, 8 years, $74 million. It's $9.25 million a year. And it seems like every number one defenseman or, hoping, team that wants their guy to be a number one defenseman is making $9 million a year this offseason. You look at Darnell Nurse, 9.25, Zach Werenski, 9.563, Seth Jones, $9.5 million. And it's just continuing to go up. And it's crazy. But I just talked about Josh Allen. I think a guy like Morgan Riley, for the Leafs, has to look at this and smile. And yeah, you might have to leave Toronto to get that money, but who cares? If you can get that money elsewhere, you've been making $5 for the first chunk of your career. Go hit it rich. And Nurse, I think, has the ability to be a number one defenseman. He was last year, but he's only done it for 1 year. And it's still unknown if he can build on that and become an even better defenseman. Seth Jones, like I said, you give really good players a lot of money. I think he deserves $9.5 million. Obviously, he's not better than Hedman, but again, you don't have to be the best player to make the most money. It's just about being free or having your contract run up at the right time. Happened for Josh Allen, happened for Werenski and all these guys, Dougie Hamilton. It's just about being at the right place at the right time and finding the right team that's going to give you that said money. And, Dougie Hamilton found New Jersey, who are desperate to be relevant, to find a player that would want to come there. You have to throw a lot of money at him to do it. Well, you accomplish the goal. Who knows? They've picked up a $9 million defenseman before in PK Subban, and for the last number of years, it has not gone well. So who knows where this goes down the stretch? But I like Nurse a lot. And like I said, I think he can be a number one defenseman. But for what he's done so far in his career, could you not found a middle ground and maybe give him 7.5 and say, this is what you've earned so far. We think you got a ton of potential. And I get Edmonton wanting to sign him to an 8-year deal. They gave 8 years to McDavid. They've given 8 years to Nugent Hopkins. They've given 8 years to Draisaitl. They gave 7 to Hyman, now 8 to Nurse. So clearly Ken Holland's structure is to have his core players on the team long-term. And it doesn't bother Ken Holland because Ken Holland is an older general manager. I don't think he'll be in the league in 5 years. So he's not going to have to face the brunt of these contracts. And McDavid's contract shouldn't age badly. Draisaitl, Nuge, who knows, Hyman, I think will. Nurse, the way he plays, potentially could be a problem down the road. But if I'm ownership, I'm like 8 years. You see, look down. So many guys have 7-8 year contracts, and that's tough because they're hard to move, and they become. You just got to hope that the salary cap moves up in a really big way, because otherwise, it's going to be tough for you to add to that roster of good players. And it's just bit piece after bit piece, and eventually you've got the Toronto Maple Leafs model where you're going to Value Village and you got a paper bag with a hole in it. That's who you're signing. You got money falling out of that ripped bag. And it's a tough way to build a team. We've seen Toronto hasn't had that much success. And I think Edmonton's getting their stars to 8-year deals. Toronto failed to do that. You think Matthews and Marner, and none of them signed for 8 years. But again, I just look at this and think Werenski, not a number one defenseman. Nurse, to me, it's more than 1 year to be a number one defenseman. Morgan Riley would be a number one defenseman if it was 3 years ago. I'm not slighting Morgan Riley. He's just not a number one defenseman. I think Seth Jones is. Dougie Hamilton, He's never been a number one defenseman. Not in Calgary. In Carolina, I still think Jacob Slavin's a better defenseman than Dougie. I'd rather have Jacob Slavin over 82 in the playoff than Dougie. And Dougie has the most goals by a defenseman in the NHL over the last 3 seasons. I'd still rather have Jacob Slavin because I know he can play 28 minutes a night. I know what he's going to give me. And yeah, he might put up 15 points, but I don't care. I'd rather have him than Dougie Hamilton. And I just look at this and what really hurt is teams getting players huge contracts. And now other teams, well, we got to do it to stay competitive. And players look around and say, well, Morgan Riley makes that. And this player if I'm clearly Werenski, they had to give him a little bit more than Seth Jones to stay in Columbus. They're going through a rebuild. They couldn't afford to lose another player, so they have to overpay Werenski to keep him in Columbus so that he doesn't depart. And then they're stuck holding the bag with nobody. Panarin, Bobrovsky, Seth Jones, Werenski, Matt Duchene, nobody stuck around. But I think it's worrisome long-term that these, even in free agency, Cody Ceci gets a 4-year deal. How did he earn that? We've seen Jay Beagle and Louis Eriksson and Antoine Roussel get 3-4-year deals in the past. Why are teams learning from this? Look at the graveyard of bad contracts around the NHL and maybe just steer away from that model and do something different. But yet nothing seems to deter these teams from giving out questionable deals. And I find it very funny that we have a flat cap and the league's more set in the salary cap and the way it's working right now than it ever has. Yet teams still are spending large amounts of money and banking on players being something that they haven't proven themselves to be yet. And I just think that's I don't think Jeff Bezos is betting, buying millions and millions of dollars worth of, VCRs, thinking that people are just going to start buying them in large shipments. You don't buy a VCR to have an Apple TV. And that's kind of what Andrew Roussel is, and Jay Beagle and Cody Ceci. And I could go on, PK Subban, but they're VCRs in a modern world. You don't give a VCR multiple years. You throw that thing in the trash. And that's my analogy for today about some of these deals. But I think they could be really, really big trouble for these teams because Braden Point deserved 9.5. Seth Jones, I would give 9.5, but just giving somebody a large, like Werenski, even a large chunk of money, just so you don't leave, you have bigger problems. That means your franchise is going down the drain because you need to pay guys more than they're worth just so they don't leave. It's like asking your wife, your soon-to-be ex-wife, to stick around for the kids. Marriage is over, bro. But nevertheless, not my money. I'm happy for these guys to get paid. But when it comes to salary cap structure, it's not moving. Next year, it said it might move up $1 million. It's another $700,000 player for the Maple Leafs. That's probably going to be it for today's show. That's a lot, bounced around a lot today. Talked about a lot of different things, a lot of fun. We're going to keep going with the NFL this week. We get preseason starting Thursday. Like I said, Breaking Bad back tomorrow with Seamus. Wednesday, hopefully do a podcast with Harrison Schutenbell talking about some NBA, free agency. Got the round table on Friday. So a lot happening and to the point. Thank you guys all for listening. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I'll be back talking to you before you know it. So have a great night, everybody. Enjoy the Rogers Cup, and we'll talk soon.